So in Canvas, we have I'm in the wrong one. We have the shirt dress module, and it has the usual explanation of the project. So we got this from ModCloth. The old version was much more complicated. It involved contouring because it had a slip dress lining underneath that was attached, and the buttons went all the way down the front. So this half button front still gets you button facing information and buttonhole information and how do you deal with buttonholes, but without the pain of putting buttonholes all the way down the front of your dress. And then it also gives you side zipper information, which is something that's new for you. So we crammed some more stuff in there while simplifying the style. And we picked something cute off ModCloth. So this lists all your pieces that you're going to need, and it talks about the fit, and it talks about all the steps that you're going to do. One of the advantages to a side zipper is that it's less expensive zipper because it's shorter. So because we have the button, it allows them to get their head through the neck hole, and then the zipper allows for accommodating of the shoulders, bust, and hip, depending on which way they put it on. It's also got a full skirt, which makes it easier to get on and off. If it was a tight skirt, this might not be a feasible option. But so then the next thing we have here for you is the blocks that we need to create in order to make this shirt dress. So we have a basic sloper set, but we need to manipulate a couple of things in order to make this dress work. So our basic sloper set has a dart in the back shoulder. I don't know if you looked at your garments lately, but you probably don't have anything with a dart in the back shoulder. So we need to get rid of that guy. And you probably came across it in your dart manipulations over the past week. You didn't have to do it, but it was in there. And so you might have seen it and thought, oh my God, do I have to do that? Not yet, but now you do. And then the other thing that you probably saw in your dart manipulations was the 2-dart bodice. This gives you a little bit better shape. So instead of having all the excess under the bust, by distributing it around the bust, you get a nicer shape. It's a little less pointy, a little softer. So we'll create these 2 new slopers from the ones that we already have. And then we'll trace these slopers off and manipulate them for the shirt dress bodice. So we'll create these in class, but your homework is going to be to put these on manila and notch them and label them and all that. This bent arrow at the center front, let me do it with this so that it shows up on the recording. This bent arrow on the center front, and the fact that that says 8/1, that means that it's one piece, and if I take the staples out and I unfold it, it's one piece. That center line goes on the fold. So some of you cut those in half, and there were 2 of them. That's not how the blocks work. The back has not a bent line, and it's open on the back. You don't need a bent line when something's on the fold, but we just did it. We do it sometimes for illustration purposes because you tend in this class not to open up your blocks on the whole, but you should be able to. So just keep that in mind. So this explains the process, which is also in your book. I think it's on page 90. And I have some worked examples step by step out on the table for you to refer to with color-coded instructions. So step 1 is in purple and step 2 is in green. So between those and the video of the process, you should be able to figure out. And after you've done all those dart manipulations, I know some of them were super tricky and you probably didn't figure them all out, and that's okay. We'll talk more about that later. But after you have all that in your brain, this is going to be super easy. And we're going to do it slash and spread instead of pivotal transfer because I think it's easier to wrap your brain around. If you love pivotal transfer, that's fine, you can do it, but slash and spread is easier. So that's going to be due on Manila next week, but you need it today for the next part of our project. So let me go down here. That's your rubric for how you're going to be judged. I have to check it because I realized the rubrics on the stuff I was grading this weekend were a total disaster, and it took me a long time to fix it. I don't know what Canvas did to them. It like scrambled them. So this is a picture of what your blocks are going to look, or your, sorry, these are not blocks. This is a style. So this is an image of what your style is going to look like the first draft when it's done. So there's a bunch of slash and spread you can see. So we'll take we'll trace off our blocks onto dot paper, make copies, and then we'll slash and spread the copies, put those onto brown paper, and then add the seam allowances that we need. There's a lot of the pieces are right side up, meaning that the right and the left have some slight differences that matter. So for one, we have a zipper in the left side, so the seam allowances at that spot on the right and the left are going to be different. So most of the pattern you make together, and then in the last part of the process, you trim away some of the seam allowance from the right side, for example, and then you can separate them, but we'll probably just leave them together. So in this case, we've always had the front bodice on the fold, but in this case we have buttons down the front. So there's 2 front bodices this time, and then the back bodice is on the fold. Both skirts are going to be on the fold. And we have some facings and some interfacing and a collar we're going to do, and a little slash and spread cap sleeve with added fullness at the top of the cap, and kind of like a pegged skirt, so fuller at the top and tighter at the bottom. And then we have a sash that ties in a bow around the waist, and we have some interfacing pieces that we haven't had to deal with in a block. So that's the pieces are listed here. And then the rubric for the project is down here, and that's for the first sample, or the first pattern. And then I went and labeled what all the seam allowances are supposed to be. So my samples are laying out there, and you can take pictures of them. But then I also created images that show all the seam allowances everywhere on the whole piece, and in some cases an explanation why. So that's a seam allowance for the skirts, and that's a seam allowance for the bodices. It looks like a lot, but it's not. I just put a lot of labeling there just so that there wouldn't be any question. So if I say it's a 1/2 inch almost everywhere, you might say, but what about, and there's an arrow pointing to it so you can get your question answered. So, and so I listed it, and I have the graphic to show it. And you have my sample that you can take pictures of that's out there on the table. For the most part, just try and think like to the purpose of it. When I'm sewing it, what am I going to need? So, and you know, if I have to hem it, how much do I need to hem it? If I need to sew the seam together, it's a woven fabric, how much do I need? So just think logically. This side doesn't sew to anything, so do I need seam allowance? Probably not. So just think logically about what it's going to be. So that's why I have those samples out there, because that information is helpful to you as your role as a pattern maker right now. So turn those samples inside out, take pictures of everything so that you can see what it's supposed to be when it's done. But there's an additional tool here that I will show you that shows you another way to figure things out. So here I have notches. So information about color-coded, about where all the notches go on every single piece in the pattern. So even though I wrote the list up last week, lots of people were still missing the notches. I OCD like counted them for you and listed what pieces they go on and how many are on each piece, and they were still missing notches. So I spent even more hours creating this so that you have documentation of where all the notches go. And then also, this is now a style. It's not a sloper anymore. So we're going back to the 1A model of how notches are marked. And that means the punch hole is backed off of the vanishing point, and the vanishing point is backed off of the apex. And you should have that hopefully hammered into your head from doing all that dart manipulation over the weekend, or over the past week. So I have that in huge bold underline in a box so that you don't forget. This is a style, so the vanishing points are not punched, the apex is not punched. That will cost you millions of dollars if you do that. All of your dresses will be ruined. So I have all that. And then this is the fit sample information with the rubric, but also, I think it's on the next page, there are super detailed instructions. So again, if you're thinking about where do I need a notch, what seam allowance do I need, the first part is just explaining what you need to get started sewing it, what supplies, and just general cutting out and things like that. But it shows you detailed how each thing gets sewn, and it tells you what the seam allowances are here too. So this is another reference for you to see how to get this thing done. And you can use this throughout the whole process. So when you're trying to figure out seam allowances, when you're trying to figure out anything, which direction to fold the darts, it's all explained in here. So you have that as well. So when I was saying earlier, once you have your pattern done, you want to cut it out, lay it out first, and make sure you record your yield. So kind of make a marker for it and take a picture of it, and make sure that you account for fusing the things that need to be fused. But you can lay it out and cut it out, and then you can start sewing it using these instructions. So and think as simply as you can. We spent a lot of time trying to distill this and cram a lot in, but with really simple skills that you already have. So if it starts to get too complicated, reread the instructions. And you might have to go back a few steps, but it's all stuff you already know. There's nothing new in here. Mainly what this is about is order of operations. So we figured out which things need to get done first in order for it to go together easily, the easiest way we could think of. So this is here too for you. And then also here for you, I created the label that goes on every single pattern piece. So you just need to put your own initials here. I don't care what number you use. I just use this as an example. But I have like the name of the piece, or the name of the dress, the name of the piece, what size, how many pieces, what it's made of. You have to put your name and the date. So there should be, you can like pull these out like index cards and be like, okay, I have that label accounted for, I have that label accounted for, I have that label accounted for, and make sure that you have them all. Whenever you see a 2 under the 8, I should point here. Whenever you see a 2 under the 8, that means you have to label that piece twice. It means there's a right and a left. Whenever you see a 1 under the 8, that means you only have, it's probably folded in half. So it should be on the fold. So when you take the staples out, you still only have one piece, not 2. But you should only need to put the label on that piece once. So on the basic block, the front bodice and the front skirt, it was 8/1. You only needed to draw one grain line on that and put one label on it, because when I take the staples out, it should be one piece. So that's another clue for you. RSU means right side up. That means there's a right and a left, and they're different. It's a tiny difference, but they're different and it matters. So I put all this information here for you. The stuff that's supposed to be in black ink is in black ink. The stuff that's supposed to be in red ink is in red ink. The only thing that's, I can't remember if I did the grain lines, but the grain lines are shown in several other places. So if we go, we also have, videos down at the bottom. So these are the sloper, this is a sloper, this is sewing, that's dart manipulation. Here's the 2 dart block videos that we're going to do in a minute, the single dart block video, and then the shirt dress manipulation videos, and then I think sewing is the next part probably, manipulation. So, so those videos are there for you, and then we also have the spec sheet, and we'll talk more about that later. And we have the pattern card, which would be really easy for you to fill out. You have all this information, the flat is already there. That's our sewing directions. That's our labels. So grain lines are shown everywhere I show the patterns. The grain lines are shown. So if you have questions about where the grain lines go, they're everywhere. So every piece gets a grain line, but some of them are weird shaped, right? So the pocket, it does have a flat edge, but it's weird shaped. And different pieces go on different grains for different reasons. So like the sash goes this way because it's going to be too long to go the other way, basically. So all the information is here for you in multiple spots. So don't panic, just plow through. I totally feel your panic pain. Like I said, full-time student myself, panicking all the time. Oh God, how do I do this? Last night I was panicking while doing my homework. So And I just go back in her, she doesn't have Canvas, but in her shell, I just go back and I reread, in my case, the syllabus and all her guidelines until I get it right. Because she's way meaner than I am. And if I ask her a question, she'll slap me down. So, so there's everything there in the module that I think you need. Do you have any questions yet? Yes.
I know the like detailed sewing instructions are on there, but are there like is the pattern drafting instructions for this is it in the book?
Yes. So outside on the board, I wrote a list of what we're going to do today, and I started writing page numbers. And we all have different versions of the book, but it'll get you close to where the page numbers are, whatever version you have. So I wrote page numbers down. I haven't written it on everything, but there's page numbers for just about everything. The sash is rectangle-ish, so there's just measurements you're going to copy from me and then draw something rectangle-ish. There's instructions for the pocket, but ours has slightly different measurements. I have a sample to show you with measurements written on it, and I explain to you how to get the shape. Everything else, the instructions are in there. We do the basic variations are the measurements, because we have different measurements on our block. So they might tell you to go out a certain bit, and proportionally for ours, that doesn't work as well. So, but I have samples of everything with measurements written on it that you can take pictures of. And in the case like of the front bodice piece, which I think is here maybe, front bodice piece for this, I have a draft of that. I mean, I have the piece that's included with my pattern, but I have another draft of it that hasn't been cut out and had seam allowances added to it. And it has all the measurements written on it with some explanations of why. So in case you don't catch that when I say it, or you don't catch it in the video, because the book has their reasoning and I use their same reasoning, but it results in different measurements. So yes, everything's in the book. It's just not all in order like it was for the basic block. Like you could pretty much go from, we moved pieces around in the basic block, but you could have gone from the first page of that chapter 4 to the last page and gotten yourself a basic block just like we did. For this, we're picking and choosing things from different chapters and modifying it a little bit to model for you what you're going to do for your final project. So yes, it's all there with some modification, because the book can't have everything you could possibly want to do for your basic blocking or your final project exactly the way you want it. So we're teaching you how to deal with it.
Are we going to do this on muslin first and then fashion fabric? Or do we just sew it once?
So I don't think we have time to sew it twice. It would be very satisfying for you to sew it twice, but I don't think we have time for it. So if you do 2 samples, there'll be extra credit. Like if a lot of people really want it, like it comes out really cute and they really want to do it. And if you have time in your life for that, there's definitely extra credit in it.
Would they be done the same way?
They are done the same way. The only thing is some of the finishing. Like we won't do all of the finishing. Yeah, we won't do all of the finishing on the muslin sample. We'll do a little bit of it just so that you can see how it's going to work, but we won't finish the whole thing. So with that being said, if you don't want to do 2 samples, but you want to attempt to make one cute, you can go ahead and make your muslin, I'm using finger quotes here, out of a fabric that feels the same when you have your eyes closed, but looks cuter when your eyes are open. So you're welcome to go ahead and make your fit sample out of something that's not muslin, just so long as it acts like muslin, because you don't want to complicate your life. We don't have time for that. Any other questions? Okay, so I'm just gonna blow in to start showing you how to get stuff done. You're gonna be working a little bit more independently than you were on the basic block so that you can get comfortable with that. Because again, when you get to your final project, which is the most fun part of this class, if you are more comfortable with it, you're not gonna be totally comfortable, but if you're more comfortable with it, it's the most fun part of this class. And so we're kind of throwing you into the fire right now. So as you can see in Canvas, I have a bunch of aids for you, but I'm gonna try and let you kind of test this out on your own. Use each other, use the book, use the samples I have, and then ask me questions. Your questions give me feedback. Even if like one person asks the question, I assume there's at least one other person who has a similar question. And that is indication to me that that information needs to be disseminated again somehow. And so, or tell you how to find it. At this stage, it's better if I can just tell you how to find it. Because again, by the time you get to your final project and beyond, I want you to be able to find things out for yourself and create new things and not be like chained to these books that tell you exactly how to do it. I want you to take these tools and create original things. So if you have a question, ask me, but you're gonna feel cold and lonely doing this by yourself. But reach out to me and reach out to others because you're probably all figuring out the same things. And one person figured out this part, and then you can help them figure out the other part. So use each other, use my samples, and then if you still can't get it, please ask me, okay? And then I'll share it with everyone. But the full-on how-to videos, step-by-step are there because the last semester's class didn't have the same handle on it that you do. And so I created a lot more step-by-step stuff for them, like the videos, but I'm judging from what I've seen so far, I don't think you need it, okay? So I need to give some of you your blocks back, which I'll do after I explain what I've got going on out there on the tables. Some of you need to do some corrections in order to make future stuff work out better. I think the best thing to do is, to be efficient with our time. This is my suggestion that I'm going to put my blocks, which granted are somewhat unfinished, but I'm going to put my blocks, which are traceable and have all the markings you need for tracing, out, and you trace my blocks. Because the block is one project and that is done. This project is about manipulating the blocks. So you just want to have one that you know is going to work to start with. So if you feel like the corrections on your block are too many, or you just don't have time to process it right now, I'm totally okay with that. So what you'll do is you'll trace my block off in pencil on dot paper. And then you can, if you want to, you can put my block on manila at home. Don't do it here today. But for today, what you'll do is once you have the copy of my block, retain it and make copies of that to manipulate. So you have a copy of my original, and then you're using copies of my copy to make your shirt dress, just like you would with your block. You will take your block at every stage today, trace it off on dot, put your manila block away, take your new copy of it, and manipulate it, because we always have to retain the original. When you're tracing off my block especially, but please yours too, trace the block off with pencil. Don't use pen or felt tip because you'll wreck the shape of it, because the wet stuff will make it gross and it won't work anymore. Make sure you copy all the punch holes because you're going to need those for manipulation. Copy my block. Okay, and for efficiency of copying my block, what I'm going to do is, once I'm done demoing with it in a minute, I'm going to set the pieces around the table. So I'm going to put the sleeve in one spot, I'm going to put the front bodice in another spot, so that you have space to work. And what you'll do is you'll walk up to one of the pieces, doesn't matter which one, and you'll trace it off. And when you're done, you'll switch with somebody. So my block will stay on the same table. That works more efficiently than me just saying, oh, my block's over there, go grab it. Because then when you're done with whatever part and you need another part, it's harder to find. If all the parts stay on the table, then you can just switch them back and forth or shuffle yourselves around the table to make sure you get all the pieces and you're not running around looking for them. Does that make sense? Okay. Any other questions? All right, let's get started with the 2-dart block. Let me pause that.